to the Unexplained Archives. I am Jennifer Gentner.
I'm Jamie Shea.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi. I'm excited we're doing this. It's going to be fun.
First episode. Pretty exciting.
I know. I guess we should tell people what we're doing here.
Yes. Yeah. So if you are here at the Unexplained Archives, we are going to be talking about anything in the paranormal, anything cryptid-like. I think we're even diving into the metaphysical down the road, right? What else?
Yeah. Just anything kind of unexplained phenomenon.
Yeah.
I nailed that word.
But phenomenon. Yes.
Phenomenon.
We are all about the supernatural and spooky, right? All the good stuff.
But all the good stuff.
I think everything that we are looking into is going to be, real stories, right? That we have found and we want to share with this community we've got going on here. So
yeah,
it's
exciting stuff.
Yeah. So Jamie, you've got to tell me, what is it about the paranormal that interests you so much?
I have had a lot of woo-woo things happen to me. I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
Some ghost stories. I lived in a house that was very creepy.
I mean, it's kind of a legendary house. Am I right? In the area?
It has become that, which is really strange. Yeah. I think it's the only thing still haunting me is
is that there now, and we are gonna get your firsthand story on that, right? Somewhere down the line.
Yeah, sometime down the line. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear all of it. Like, we haven't even really discussed it completely.
That's true. We've just kind of like teased around with it, but not really got the full story.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that'll be really exciting.
Yeah, we've got a really good lineup, I feel like, already.
Oh my gosh.
Starting, so
I can't even get over the stuff. Like, we've had guests come to us already.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
We did not have to go fishing yet.
It's awesome. Yes,
we've got, which is so good.
Yeah, so we've got UFO stuff, we've got ghost stuff.
Yes. Yeah, we've got psychic mediums coming up.
Psychic mediums.
Yeah. So I think maybe even some Bigfoot.
That's right.
Down the road. Yeah, we've got Bigfoot connections. So
we do.
we're gonna use them.
We know them. We know the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. We do. We know all the right paranormal people.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell me, when did this all kind of start for you? As a
child?
That's what I wondered, because that's how it is with me. So what kinds of things, like when you were younger, that really kind of got you like, wow, this is like super interesting to me?
The same. One of the houses that I lived in as a child there was no way it could have been anything else but paranormal.
Yeah.
I can't explain it away with like electrical problems or, gas.
Right.
Just, right. So definitely unexplained.
Okay.
I can't say for certain 100% that it was a ghost, but I definitely can't see another explanation for it. Right. So that's what got me started in wanting to explore more.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
that is good. Oh, and here's our
first
guest.
This is our first guest of the season.
I will forewarn everybody. This will happen several times on the show. There will be a guest cat spot.
That's okay. The more the merrier.
Probably throughout. Yes, right.
That's awesome.
That was Frank.
Frank. Oh, Frank is grown.
I know, he's big now, right?
He's so big.
Yes.
I didn't even recognize him.
Yeah, Frank's our baby.
I guess we should mention that you're in Michigan and I'm in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jamie and I are not in the same place. However, we met in Michigan.
Yes.
And I think mostly because, I mean, we're both involved in film. We're both
Yes.
involved in the film industry.
Yep.
And I'm trying to remember how it really all began. It was, I think it was more like a Facebook connection.
I think it was a Facebook connection.
Yeah.
And then that led to you being a guest on another podcast.
Yeah. Do you want to plug your other podcast? Plug away.
Yes, sure. It's TV We Love.
Yes.
And it's with my partner, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
He's the other host. And we talk about a single season of our favorite TV shows, and we kind of do a deep dive and have guests. And sometimes we have directors and actors from the shows we talk about. And sometimes we just have people that are, TV buffs or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's a fun show.
I ended up on there.
Yeah. And so you were a guest when we talked about The Office.
Yes. Yeah. And that was season 2, your guys' season 2.
Yeah.
And then eventually with Game of Thrones.
That's right. Yeah.
So 2 of my favorites. It worked out well.
It did. And then it was just, from there, we just kind of figured out that we both had the same interests and kind of just took off from there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was the thing. It was kind of funny because I feel like this all kind of started. So I moved into the house I am right now almost exactly a year ago. And so when we moved in here, strange things started happening almost immediately. In fact, my daughter knows the son of the previous owners.
Ooh.
And we hadn't been here 3 days, and she ran into him, and he says, that place is haunted, right?
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, no, they do not put that kind of information into, when you're signing papers for your new home.
Yeah.
They don't talk about that, right? So,
they should.
They really should.
They should. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably hard not to find a haunted house in one way or another, right? I mean, you're just going to kind of have that. If you believe in that type of thing, right? I mean, we're going to have people who are probably drawn to the show because they believe as well. But, we may be skeptics, which I'm all for.
Me too.
I love it. I love to discuss it and figure out, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, so when we kind of moved in here, things kind of started to happen. A lot of knocking at first, and then things kind of started flying off the walls.
Wow.
when they shouldn't have. And maybe someday we can talk more about that story too.
I haven't heard anything about this story. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, I had posted about it on Facebook, and that's when you came to me, and that's how I knew that you were interested too, because you were like, you live in a haunted house? I lived in a haunted house.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So that's I think what really kind of got us started on this whole journey we're on right now.
Yeah.
Doing this podcast is just, we realize, like, we both, not only are we both from a series of haunted houses, but we have an interest in it too. And not just necessarily like, ghosts per se, but, all the other things that we don't understand that are going on in the world.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So we
figured maybe we'll find the answer to some things.
I would love that.
Yeah, and maybe it won't be the answer we think it's going to be. Who knows? We'll have to see.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be a fun adventure, and we are so glad that you guys are tuning in. And
thanks for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we're kind of learning as we go. Yeah, or watching. Yeah. So,
where are we going to be? We're going to be on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah, we're on YouTube and probably all the major podcast platforms, right? Wherever you get your
Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
So we'll be Unexplained Archives on each of those.
Yeah.
So you'll find us there.
Yeah, absolutely. So cool. And Jamie and I are also trying to figure out our time zones as we go, because I I'm in Michigan, so I'm Eastern,
Yeah, I'm
and
Central.
and Jamie is Oklahoma, so Central. So we're getting there
Yeah.
with that too. Like
Yeah,
that's
we
our
are.
lineup issue.
Exactly.
To
We're like,
figure out.
we'll meet at 11. Your time or my time?
That's right. Yes.
We have to figure that stuff out.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
Well, do you want to dive in?
let's do
I
it.
feel
Let's
like this
do it.
first topic is very interesting. I can't
Yeah,
wait
I'm
to
excited.
hear more.
I want to stay on topic today. I have I'm a huge, we're both huge coffee drinkers, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
yeah, we can't
I'll
function.
be I'll be slurping if that's
Yeah.
okay. Nobody knows.
I also have a huge mug problem. I I
Oh,
love them. Like we have an overabundance. It's kind of
yeah.
ridiculous.
I
Like
do
I'm at the
too.
point now where I kind of have to like rotate them out. Like I have to, put some away and bring some out. So I can't help it. Like I love them. So but today I decided if this will give you a
Oh,
hint
that's perfect. Yeah.
on what we're discussing today. It is this story in particular I wanted to talk about because growing up, my dad would tell me about this story, and it's because it's a local story for me. I'm actually from a small town called Chelsea, Michigan, home of Jiffy Mix. If you are aware,
Yeah. That's right.
yeah, the Purple Rose Theater actor Jeff Daniels.
That
So
Jeff
that's our so
Daniels.
this is our claim to fame, right?
Yes.
Um,
He
and
loves Chelsea too.
oh
He
yeah,
talks so highly of it. So,
it's
yeah.
such a cute town. I don't live there now, but I'm not too far away. But my family has been there literally forever. Like I actually like my I can't even remember great 4 or 5 great grandfathers actually founded the town. I don't know if we ever talked about that.
Wow.
Yeah, so my family's been there a really long time, and so yeah, so this particular story I loved and I thought I wanted to talk about today because it takes place in the town right next to Chelsea, Dexter, Michigan. And not only that, not only was it something we talked about, but also as we get the story going, I had another connection with someone who is a part of this story, who I
Oh, that's
actually got a
great.
chance to meet some years ago, and I got even more like inside information on it. So I thought that was really cool. So I thought this is a great story to start with. Um,
Yes. That's
so I
perfect.
hope you guys enjoy. Um, so yeah, like I said, our story today is in Dexter, Michigan. Like we're in southeast area of
You gotta show where
Michigan.
it is on the hand.
Oh yeah, let's see here. Like yeah, like probably like down in here. Yeah, for
Okay.
those watching,
Yeah.
right somewhere around there. We always have our maps with us.
That's right.
Um, so this story actually might be one of the largest UFO sightings that no one is really talking about. It's always surprising to me that when you're watching TV shows on UFO sightings and things like that, like you never hear about this one. So I do kind of want to talk about this story. I want to get it out there because it's insane the amount of people who were witness to all of this. So
Yeah. And I was reading through your notes and
yeah,
it reminded me that I have heard of this story a
wonderful.
long time ago, and
Yeah.
I did not even realize that it was in Dexter.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. It's crazy. So many people involved, so many people are seeing things, and it's like what came of it all? Like what's it all about? So
yeah,
yeah.
I'm
So
excited.
yeah, okay. So snuggle in, get your beverage.
I got
And here we
mine.
go. So reports of strange flying objects were actually coming in not only from residents of Washtenaw County, and Washtenaw County is the biggest city that everyone may know from that county is probably the Ann Arbor area, home of University of Michigan.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of the week of March 14th in 1966. But sheriff deputies locally had started reporting to see lights in the sky as well. Calls were actually coming in that entire week leading up to our main story of today. And so Frank Manor and his family owned a farm on McGinnis Road, which is just northwest of Dexter. On March 20th, 1966, Frank and his family were watching TV in their living room around 8:30 at night. and their dogs began to bark outside. So Frank and his 18-year-old son, Ronald, they decided to go outside and see what the dogs were barking at. And as they came outside, they noticed a bright, shining object kind of flying overhead. So can you imagine, like, like my dogs bark, and it's because the Amazon truck is in the
Right.
driveway.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
don't expect to step outside and see something hovering above your house, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like in 1966,
Oh, right.
this was, I mean, what else could it be?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the
So
thing. I mean, there were no
there were no
drones.
drones. Yeah.
There was nothing like that. Just like you said, it's like, what all can it be? I mean, is it an airplane?
Aircraft. Right.
Right. So to see something like that would definitely, like, ugh, like, I wouldn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I might turn around and go back inside. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I always wonder what I would do if I saw something like that.
Yes.
Would I run and hide? Would
Right.
I stand there mesmerized?
Sure.
I don't know. I guess you don't
Yeah.
know until
Yeah, you don't
you're
know
in
until
it.
it's happening to you.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask. I mean, have you ever had an experience seeing lights like this in the sky,
I
or?
have not like that. The only way
Yeah.
I know how to I was driving and I had someone with me and we were going on a long road trip from
Yeah.
Arkansas to Louisiana and it
Oh,
was
wow.
like at 2 or 3 in the morning and just out of nowhere these like almost like ribbons of light that
Mm.
they look like they were kind of dancing with each other.
Oh, wow.
And I want to say they twisted almost like a DNA strand.
Oh
It
my
was the
gosh. Cool.
weirdest thing. And I was like, do you see that? And he was
Yes.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then just like that, they were gone, like
Wow.
gone. But
Yeah.
they had movement. They were hovering, but
Wow.
moving around each other. And
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it other than ribbons of light that
Oh
were
my God.
dancing. Like
That's
I
very
just
cool.
never seen anything like it. And I mean, I was driving and
Yeah.
I just kind of froze. But
Sure. Yeah, you
yeah,
would, like, not knowing at all what you're seeing. I mean,
yeah.
oh my gosh. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
have no idea. I've looked it up to see if anybody else had seen anything like that. I saw a few things that look like a similar description, but not exactly. So who
Yes.
knows? There's just so many things out there that we have no idea,
Oh,
you know?
absolutely. That's the
So
thing. And there's so many things in the sky right now. I mean, you've got, satellites and things like that too, like, things that you're spotting. You never know
yeah,
anymore, like,
right.
what any of this stuff could be.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so to walk outside your front door and have something like that so close. And I think that's what would make the difference for me, because I feel like I've seen lots of lights in the sky, things that are
right.
really unexplained, formations or colors, shapes and things like that that make me wonder. But I think having something so close, that's where I'm like, I don't know. Like,
Oh,
do I want to get
yeah,
involved? I don't know. Yeah,
yeah.
right.
I mean, I'm not really into being abducted or anything, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm
I'm not
also
sure what I would do.
anti-abduction.
I
I
think I
agree.
draw the line at abduction, so
I agree. Yeah. So I think that's what it is for me. Like, how close, I don't want to get too close because I do not want to get beamed up. That's the
right.
thing. Like, do not beam me up, Scotty. I want
Yeah,
to stay here. But if it's far away, like, I have no mind, like, I don't mind
I
looking
know.
and, like, checking out and see how it's cool.
And
But
and I feel like I would get close, just
mhm,
not
not that close.
entering, I don't know, not that
Right.
close.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, my
Well,
curiosity usually gets the best of me in a lot of
sure.
cases, so
All right. Well, don't get
yeah.
abducted next time.
I'll try.
Just
I'll
stay,
try.
stay, stay
Yeah.
safe. Well, Frank and his son, they were not afraid. They decided they were going to go and take a look and see what it could possibly be. Um, there were also other witnesses in that area who saw that object, and they claim it did not have characteristics of an airplane. So there you
Okay.
have it. We talked about
Yeah,
airplanes and the possibility of that. They said this one
right.
didn't.
Okay.
Um, so Frank and Ronald decided they were going to follow the object to see if they could maybe get a closer look at it.
Wow, that's pretty brave.
It's very brave. So, and remember that. So they kind of live on a farm, And so they've got all this property. This thing is hovering above their farm. So they're
Yeah.
walking along their property. They followed it all the way to a swamp that's on their property. And then
Okay.
the object actually landed directly into the marshy area. This is where I would say, feet don't fail me now.
Yeah, we're not going into the marsh. We're not
Right.
going after this thing into the swampy marsh.
Right.
I'm not.
I'm good.
I'm not. I'll be like,
Yeah.
let's come back tomorrow in the
Yeah.
daytime
I
with
mean, like, let's get the
reinforcement.
dogs. We're gonna go back and watch TV.
Yeah.
So no, these guys, they're very brave. They're standing, they're watching, and Frank later described the object as being lighted and brown and sphere
Okay.
and shaped, and
I thought
that
the
it actually,
brown, sorry,
yeah,
I thought the brown color was interesting that it was
it is
brown because you
interesting.
think silver, you think,
Sure, yes,
metallic.
that's exactly it. And so in my mind, when he says that, I'm kind of wondering if it is like a brown, metallic, you know what I'm saying? Like that's
Yeah.
honestly what I pictured, because I'm trying to think what other material, something, any type of craft, right, could be, because
Right.
you just assume it's got to be metal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the
That's
fact that he
really
says it's
interesting.
brown, it's a brown color. It is lit up. And he did say that it's a sphere shape. And he actually said the outside had like a quilted look to it. So almost like a print to the
Interesting.
outside of it. Yeah. And Frank then later described to the sheriff's department that two small lights at the outer edges of the object, they actually had like a glowing bluish green color, which intensified the longer they were out there, and then turned into like a brilliant red color at times.
Huh.
And yeah, he said the entire object would turn yellow and white, and the light ran horizontally between the two outer lights.
Okay, this is a pretty detailed
So
description.
detailed, right?
Yeah.
And I will say it's because this thing was there that long on top of it that they were able to really get such a good look at
Right.
it. You do have people who get the opportunity to see these things and they describe them, but I feel like this might be one of the most detailed description of a
Yeah.
UFO that I've heard. I mean,
Right.
it's pretty detailed, and you have to imagine if they're like at marsh level, like you're standing and the marsh is down below and this thing is like hovering. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to be pretty close to eye level from it. I
Yeah.
want to say, what did they say? It's like 500 yards it's from them. So, I mean, they're close, but not, like not right on top of it, but enough to be able to notice these details is pretty amazing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you make something like that up? And the people that, I mean, so his son, they both had the same story?
Yes.
For the description. And then did the other people that also witnessed it, did they describe it the same way?
Yeah. And so it got to the fact, let's see. So they are actually, they're pretty close to it. The thing actually would come and then it would disappear too.
Oh, okay.
It would be there and then it would just disappear and then it would come back.
Oh, wow.
So when they say disappear, I do wonder, what exactly does that mean? Does it, disappear in thin air? Is it flying away so quickly that it seems like it's disappearing and then comes right back?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like what I imagine it as.
Right. Or does it have an invisibility cloak?
Yeah, right. Right. Which is, I mean, who knows? It certainly could. Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't able to get an exact time as to how long the saucer was there. I did read some things that said it could have been up to 4 hours.
Okay.
That it was in
that
area.
Time for something to hang around.
Right. And here's what I do know, because you were asking about the other people who had seen it.
Yeah.
I know that it was there long enough for Frank to go back and get his wife, go get his other children. His in-laws actually came over at one point.
Okay.
We're looking at this thing. This is how long it was there and just kind of hovering, which makes you wonder, like,
yeah,
what was the intention? What was the intention of this thing? It had to have known it had to have seen the people outside, you know.
Yeah.
Nothing ever came out or tried to make contact. You know, was it having trouble? Was
Right.
it feeling it? I mean, I
Mechanical
know with
issues
this,
or
right. You know, we
right,
talk about it disappearing. Like, was it an invisibility thing? Were they trying
right.
to, was it trying to disappear because it was having, you know,
Like camouflage or
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, because it
Hmm.
was having some difficulty flying away. Maybe it was having technical difficulties,
Right.
and it couldn't get away like it wanted to. You know, because
Right.
now at this point, you know, there's a crowd outside,
Right.
not too far away from it. But it
Yeah.
wasn't. It wasn't. There was nothing aggressive about it being out there. It didn't seem to try and like make necessarily any kind of contact or anyone from the inside coming out.
Right. Okay.
So
So did it land or did it hover this entire time? Did it
it
land
makes
in the
it
swamp?
sound like it landed in the marsh.
Okay,
Yes,
that's what I got from the story as well, but I wasn't
yeah,
sure. So,
yes,
okay.
yes. So all the whole family is
Yeah.
gathered around looking at this thing, right? Um, so eventually, the Manor family decided they better call the police.
Yeah.
So Washtenaw County deputies, as well as the Dexter police officers, were called out to the scene. And as they approached the area with flashlights, the lights on the object went out. So it's as
Mm.
if it saw the lights
Mhm.
from outside, and so then it would dim its lights. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. So I
yeah,
wonder if that was a let's try not to be noticed or it
right.
was some kind of a mechanical response to light. You know
Exactly.
what I
To
mean?
other light.
So,
Yeah. Was it
mhm.
a form of communication in their own right? You know,
Right.
there's like, and it's flashing lights in a
So many
way.
questions.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. Tons of questions. And I can only imagine being a spectator there,
Yeah.
you know, witnessing like it would be so surreal. Like
Yeah, it
this
would.
going on for
Yeah.
hours, and you know, and the police are there.
I'm kinda
And so,
jealous. I wanna see this.
right,
Oh, great. I'm probably summoning it back.
right,
I wanna see.
right. So Frank and his son then they heard a sound like a whistle, and they said it was similar to a rifle bullet ricocheting off an object.
Oh, okay.
They said the UFO then went up in the air and passed directly over them and disappeared.
Okay.
So moments later, Robert Honeywell, a patrolman with the Dexter Police Department, saw what he later assumed was the same object that the miners had seen, or I'm sorry, the Manners had seen on their property.
Okay.
The officer had parked his patrol car at the Quigley Brand Road intersection while Dexter Police Chief Robert Taylor and his patrolman, Nolan Lee, entered the Manor property to help in the police search there. Now that it's gone, other people are now, they've now decided like walk around and see if they can figure out where this thing disappeared.
Right.
Meanwhile, Honeywell said the object appeared over his patrol car at about 1,000 feet. So he looks up, this thing is now 1,000 feet above him. It hovered there and then began a series of sweeps over the manor swamp.
Huh.
So here he is at a road
Yeah.
where he's not too far from their property, but this thing is hovering over him at one point and then flies over. And where he's standing, he can actually see this thing sweeping down over their
And this was
property.
after, um, it kind of left the swamp?
Yes.
So then
Yes.
the officer saw it, and then
Yep.
it kind of made its way back and did a few sweeps around the swamp
Yes. It sure did.
after the okay, got it.
Yes. So,
Interesting.
yeah, I know, right?
Mhm.
Now, what he saw was that the object had red and white lights that would change to a bluish tone. So now he is reporting he's seeing the same type of lights,
The same
and
thing.
he had not even been to the manor property yet to have that conversation with them to see
Oh,
what they have found out. So he's
right. So
kind of
he was on
reporting the
his
same.
way. Was he on his way there? Was he one of the officers called? Is that what you understood?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I understand that he was actually called out, but he was kind of like on his way and then began to see the same type of thing. So I believe he parked, he got out, and then was kind of looking at this thing
Okay.
because now it's like above him.
Yeah.
And so then he's able to then watch it take off and start sweeping the property from where he's at. So he's not too far away from where they are,
Right.
but they have not actually like interacted and discussed what they
Okay.
have seen on the actual
That is
property themselves.
interesting.
So that's what I
Okay.
find so interesting is that they both are
Mhm.
reporting the same type of lights
Yep.
and kind of same look to it. And so then Honeywell says that the object that was flying was now joined by three other
Oh,
flying
wow.
objects, and the four objects flew off together.
Okay.
Now that leaves,
Huh.
for me, that leaves all kinds of questions and kind of goes back to like maybe a reason why this thing was landing in the marsh in the first place. Like, was it having some trouble? It was having,
Right.
couldn't quite get
Was
off the ground or like
right.
really
Was this
fly the
the
way it's supposed
rescue?
to. And
Yeah.
it felt like, yeah,
Yeah.
here comes the tow trucks, right?
Right. Yeah.
And what is it that
Huh.
these aircrafts, these saucers were able to do to then make this craft be able to fly off like they were without anyone getting out, right?
Yeah.
Nobody saw anything getting out. So that to me is like incredible in itself. Like
Yeah. It
that,
is.
yeah, like a call for help, and here they come along and they were able to do something, and
Right.
away they went. So I find
That's
that
so interesting.
super
And
interesting.
it's things like that that make these kind of reports more valid to me,
Yes, I
is
agree.
these, separate accounts, same description.
Yes,
I mean, why would someone make this up,
that's
you
what I
know?
think too. I mean,
So,
and as we go further with the story, the amount of witnesses to these things, like you
yeah.
can't. I mean, I know there is a phenomenon of people who get together and I
Mhm.
off the top of my head I can't think of what it's called, but it's almost like mob mentality where they're all thinking
Right.
and believe in the same thing.
Yeah.
However, I with this one, especially when you have so many police officers out there, I mean, really their job is to be objective to all things.
Exactly.
So for them to be seeing this, and not only that, but we have to remember that the week leading up to this situation, the people were in the sheriff's department were already seeing this stuff happening. Like they were
Right.
seeing lights in the sky. They were having other people call in and
Right.
say we're seeing this stuff outside. So when you put it all together, like what are the chances that everyone is either seeing things or making this up, and
Right.
for what, right?
Yeah.
It was a different time. It's not
Yeah.
like today. I mean, people do all kinds of things today to get attention. I think you
That's
have to
true.
vet your stories today way more, and i
Yeah.
and i think as we go on with the podcast, that's something we'll have to do, like
Exactly. Yeah.
what
And
is
I'm
real
all
and what
about
isn't real.
that. Like, I don't wanna, I'm not gonna take everything at face value. I
Sure.
mean, I believe that there are unexplained phenomenon, but
Yeah,
I also believe that there are some explanations to some things as well,
absolutely,
you know? So,
absolutely, yes.
right. But one
um
thing that stood out to me about, like, especially with the officers, especially in the time that this took place,
yeah,
is he needs to feed his family. He's not gonna
right,
risk his job
yes,
by looking mentally insane by
absolutely,
reporting this just to, get attention.
right.
I don't know. I It makes it a little more valid,
I agree.
in my
Yes, I
mind.
agree with
Just
that. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, he's a family man. Like
Right.
he sees something, and that is near his property. He wants
Yeah.
to just check it out and see. Who would have thought that it was going to turn into such a big deal, right?
Right.
That
And
it
the
was going to
police
be
officer,
yes,
he's got his reputation,
a
he
thousand
wants
percent.
the town to respect him and take him
Yes,
seriously, and so
exactly.
right.
Yes, and
So,
this was a time where a story like that would have, yes, you would have looked crazy.
yeah,
You would have looked crazy,
exactly.
100%.
Yeah,
So wanting that type of attention, I think, would have been very rare at that
right.
time.
Yeah, I
So,
agree.
I tend to
Yeah.
believe what's being said.
Uh-huh.
Um, so a short time later, in the same general area, two sheriff's deputies, Stanley McFadden and David Fitzpatrick, saw a lighted object in the sky at North Territorial Road, which is near Mass Road, also in Dexter, a bit further from the farm, from the manor farm,
Okay.
but not too far, same town. The officers turned their scout car spotlight on the object, and McFadden would say later that it was the size of a small house which was kind
Wow.
of pushed down flat. So, I mean,
Okay.
nothing
Yeah.
small.
Right.
He also said it had red and green lights on it and movements
Okay.
which could not possibly have been made by an aircraft he's ever heard of. And
Okay.
when they saw it shortly after that, the object disappeared, and that was that. So same town, same, around the same time. Now
Yeah.
they're seeing lighted objects in the sky, and so they've gotten such a good look at it. They see that it has to be the size of a house.
Right. And when you say it was a short time later, do you mean later that same day or just like
Yeah,
within a day or so
this is
or
all
same
happening in
day?
the same day.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
a
All
lot of
right.
action in
A
Dexter,
lot of
Michigan
action.
tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, in the week that followed, there were a number of other sightings reported. Most of them came from Hillsdale County, which is about 70 miles southwest of Ann Arbor.
Okay.
The eyewitnesses included more than 80 Hillsdale College students and the Hillsdale County Civil Defense Director, William Van Horn. So, this is what I'm talking about
80
80
people?
students. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, that's a lot of people to get together and be like, hey,
Yeah.
let's do something fun. Let's
Right.
really mess with the people
Yeah.
and see this. And I also so I will have in the show notes I will have like where I got a lot of my information, but there is a really great like a little mini, it was actually like a news report that was done, and they talk with some of the women, like the college students that were there, and they talk about just going right to their windows and looking right outside of their dorms, and this
Wow.
thing is like right outside there. So this is kind of all of this is really happening within just a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So when the students saw this, they ended up calling Van Horn after seeing the flying light go over a swamp on their campus. So I find this really interesting too. Like
The
there's
swamp.
the
What is the swamp?
swampy. Yeah, what is
Yeah.
it that's about the swamp? Why is it hovering over the swamp area? Is there something that
Hmm.
can get from that, or is this just
Right.
happen to be, you know, is it just
Is it the
coincidence?
swamp? Maybe it's not the swamp gas making us see these things, but maybe there's
Mhm.
something about the chemicals that they need. Do you know
Sure.
what I mean? From the
Yes.
swamp.
I mean, it's definitely a question to pose because
Yeah.
this is two times now. This is
Uh-huh.
where something like this has been spotted.
Right.
So I
And
find that
it's not
interesting.
necessarily a swampy area, you know?
No, that's the
So
thing. This is
yeah.
no. Yeah. I mean,
So
Michigan has obviously there's a lot of water.
right.
But I wouldn't say there's too many swamps per
Right.
se.
Yeah.
So the fact that these crafts are finding the handful of swamps that we have here in
Yeah.
Michigan,
Exactly.
they're on the swamp tour, is what they're
They
doing.
are. They are on the
Yeah.
swamps.
um, so
They should
actually,
have been
so
in Louisiana. I'm sorry.
well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
It's
if you
like,
want
don't you
some
guys
swamps,
know? You need to be a little further south.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, they maybe they were like, we took a wrong turn.
Yeah.
They're like, we said north.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to. You want some swamps, you got to go south.
Yeah.
so so this the director William Van Horn, he said he actually watched the object through his binoculars for about an hour,
Wow.
kind of watching it, kind of hovering over the swamp.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so he said it actually emitted a wavering like orange, red, and white lights while it was kind of over that swamp area. So once again, all of
Yep.
these things have these particular lights
Yeah.
on them. Yeah. So I think it's super interesting.
It
Um,
is.
so I'm going to give you just a little bit of background on our next kind of like big player in this story,
Okay.
and how I'm kind of connected in this and was able to get a little more information. So just a quick history on me. Yes, I work in film. I started out doing video work. And one of my first jobs for a videographer, this was before YouTube. So we worked for, I think it was like expertvillage.com, and I think the other one was like monkeyc.com. So these were websites that had like how-to videos. And like, because now on YouTube, you can go and you can find out how to do anything. And I believe, I haven't looked in a while, but I do think some of the videos that we helped produce were eventually put on YouTube.
Okay.
So if you dig deep, you might actually be able to find some of these videos. And so my job was to actually find experts on different things. I mean, you name it, they were looking to do it, like how to play hockey or different types of hairstyles.
Hmm.
And one was finding, like, learning how to drive a car. And so I thought, okay, well, the best person to talk to is someone who probably does like driver's training.
Right.
And there's all kinds of private schools and things like that around here to learn driver's training. So I literally picked one out of a phone book. I just was like, I'm going to go with this person. It wasn't far away. It was over in Ypsilanti, which is just outside of Ann Arbor.
Right.
And so I called and I got in touch with a guy by the name of Doug Harvey, and he ran the school. And I kind of explained, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm looking to do. My boss would come, he does the video work, and I just kind of stand by. Um, and that was my job in early video, just standing by.
Yeah. Hey, you got to start somewhere.
You do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, learn, bring the coffee and just stand by. That's kind
Yeah.
of what you do. Yeah. Or wrap a cord.
Yeah.
Um, and so, so Doug was like, yeah, absolutely. And we were to meet him kind of in like the parking lot area where he does a lot of his testing. And then eventually we would get in the car with him and film him. And so we get there, and I don't even think I told my boss at the time, like the name or anything like that. But when we got there and they were introduced, my boss, who went into videography, he was actually an Ann Arbor policeman for many
Okay.
years. So when he shook hands with Doug Harvey, he turns and he looks at me. He goes, "Do you know who that is?" And I'm like, "No." I was like, I literally picked a name from a phone book. I don't know who that is. He's like, "Doug Harvey. You don't know Doug Harvey?" I'm like, "No, I'm sorry. I don't know Doug Harvey." So I got a brief history on who Doug Harvey was, and he was the youngest sheriff in Washtenaw County, and he lived this insane life, the things that he did. And we actually, once we got in the car with him, he just started opening up and telling us these things.
Wow.
Yeah, he started talking about like, yeah, I mean, some of the things, like he was sheriff in Washtenaw County from 1964 to 1972. He, during that time as he was sheriff, he actually was part of catching serial killer John Norman Collins.
Oh.
And he was, if memory serves, there were some murders happening around Eastern Michigan
Yeah.
University, around that area. And so Doug Harvey was a part of that. He also dealt with student backlash at the U of M during the Vietnam War.
Mm.
And so there was a lot of protesters. And what Doug Harvey was notorious for, and he shared all of this with us with a lot of pride. He is such a character. He would explain, like, he would have, these protesters, they would get arrested and they would come back to the jail, which eventually got named Harvey Hotel.
Oh, okay.
And and he would actually shave the heads of the hippies, the men hippies, because he hated long
Really?
hair. Yes. So he would cut
Wow.
their hair in there, which we would never be able to get away with
And
that today.
how was he when he told you that? Was he like, "Yeah, I shave their heads," or he was like, "Oh, I shave their head," you know?
No, he was very he had no shame. He was like, "Yeah, I
Okay.
did it." Yeah. He was just like, "Yeah, this is kind of like what I did." And he was like, "I didn't believe that men should have such long hair." And that was their kind of their punishment, which you feel bad because here they are, peaceful protesters, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, they get hauled in and have their head shaved, but that was what he was known for.
And I mean,
Um,
back in that time, I can see how no one would really think much of it, it's just part of
right?
their punishment. So
Absolutely. Like no one's going to
so
say anything
crazy.
about that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we also talked about while we were in the car was this situation in Dexter with the UFOs. And so I felt like I got a lot of insight. Like I found the whole conversation fascinating. And, you know, I know there's probably a lot of people out there who didn't care for Doug Harvey at the time. You know, he was
Mhm.
pretty radical in his own right,
It sounds like
for
it,
some
yeah.
things he did. But you know, he also was very strong in his beliefs, and even with this particular case with the UFO, he was, I mean, he stuck to his guns. Like he was there on the property, and the things that he talked about, he was like, this, that's what it was. You know, he knew like what he was talking about, and he was like,
Mhm.
there's just no other explanation for what was out there. So, um, Doug Harvey was there that night. He went out to the manors. He saw the flying object.
Okay.
Um, he had also been hearing the reports all week from his own deputies, you know, so they're
Yeah.
coming to him and saying, listen, this is what we're seeing. So he's getting, you know, the conversation is happening at work and as
All
well
around him.
now all around him. And now the manors are saying this. And he believed his men. He believed the Manners as well. Doug Harvey knew the Manor family, and he knew they were the type of people who were not going to make something like this up. So Harvey decided to request some federal help. He wanted to get to the bottom of this, but all his requests were ignored. He
Yeah.
then reached out to Congressional Representative Vivian Weston, and Weston was able to pull some strings and got the U.S. Air Force to send investigator Dr. J. Allen Hynek out to investigate the situation. At the time, the U.S. Air Force had a section for UFO investigations, and it was called Project Sign, which later became called Project Blue Book.
Okay, I've
And
heard of Project Blue Book. I have
yes,
heard of that, yeah.
I think that's more, I don't think it was Project Sign for very long before it became Blue Book. So that's
Okay.
probably the more common name that you would hear. Hynek, he was an astrophysicist from Northwestern University. He was actually an advisor for them. He had investigated and explained several UFO sightings. Hynek was a natural skeptic. So this is not like he
Okay.
was out there every time going, that's what this is. He was actually a skeptic about things. And
Yeah.
he came to Michigan to investigate the situation. He originally had told Sheriff Harvey that he could not explain it. He went out to the site. I do know that. Doug Harvey took him out there to the site to see the aftermath of it all. And he looked, and Doug Harvey told me the same thing. He said he looked at me and said, I don't have any other explanation for this. While they went back to the police station after they investigated, a phone call came through for Hynek, and he left for a little while, took his phone call in an office, and by the time he came back out, he said, "It's swamp gas. That's what this is. The only explanation is swamp gas." End of story.
Mhm.
That's that.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And so, talking, like, we're driving in the car. I'm in the car with Doug Harvey. I'm with my boss who's videotaping. We're supposed to be completely on topic of how to drive a
Yeah,
car, right? How to do things.
right.
And we have stopped. We're so fascinated now by these stories because this is firsthand information. Like, I just think this is really, really cool.
Yes.
And to hear him say, he was like, I know he went in there and he took a phone call, and that phone call said, this is what you're going to say this is. So I
Mhm.
feel like even Hynek was being silenced
Yeah,
about a lot of these things,
I think
right?
so too. I mean, that's exactly what it sounds like.
Yes.
Um, and it's crazy that he was on board at first,
Right.
even as a skeptic.
Even as a skeptic.
Even as a skeptic.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he had passed this information on to who he thought might be experts in, you know, the field of whatever, you
Sure.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
and
Right.
and then they came, or was it the government? Because tell me again, he worked with the U.S. Air Force.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So it
Okay.
was the Air Force who kind of had this division
Okay.
of Project Blue Book.
100%
So,
feel like he was hushed. Yeah.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, in a sense, I mean, I will say this. This is my opinion on these, on things, especially when it comes to UFOs, aliens. I do feel like, in a sense, the government does keep a lot of this stuff quiet. And I
Yeah.
do think they keep it quiet. I think their heart is in the right place.
I think they don't want to panic.
That's exactly what
A
it is.
widespread
Because
panic. Yeah.
think about how many people would absolutely panic. I mean, like
Oh, yeah.
crazy in the street, running around,
Uh-huh.
looting, screaming, scared, mortified. I mean,
Yeah.
just think of what happened, with the War of the Worlds
Mhm.
radio broadcast.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a broadcast that went on as to be completely a dramatic, pretend radio show. And
Right.
people were in a complete panic and so worried, like we're being invaded by aliens. And if that's the type of reaction you're going to get from people, and I wish I knew the year that came out, but I mean, radio times. So it had to be, 1940s, I would assume.
Yeah.
Um, you have to believe like that's how people, would react. So I feel like, in a sense, the government's like, listen, we can't tell everybody everything.
Mhm.
Everyone's gonna freak out. So I do think that was what was happening in this situation. However, by coming back with that type of solution,
Yeah.
you're now making the people involved look
Seem
crazy.
crazy. Yeah. And I
Yes.
think that could be another reason why, like you said, their heart's in the right place. Let's not create a panic, but it also prevents bandwagoners
Yes.
from, you know what I'm saying? So like
Yes.
they try to keep this information at a minimum, and then yeah, they'll take these reports from other people, but let's not, you know, have people jumping on board for attention kind of thing too.
Exactly.
So,
That's the thing.
yeah.
And I think that would happen. If you weren't
Yeah.
careful, that type of thing would completely happen.
Right.
So I get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
However, what ends up stemming from that is you get, these police officers,
Right.
this family, many families, right? I mean, this is, we could talk many episodes
I mean,
about
we're in the
abduction
hundreds at
sightings.
this point because we have the 80 students alone,
Yes,
and then
absolutely.
plus all the townspeople and,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
multiple
Everything leading
places
up.
too, not just one place. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, they happen to both be swamps, so I know you're about to probably expand on that, but yeah,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so for those, I actually did a little bit of a deep dive on swamp gas because I didn't really know exactly what that entailed.
I don't know yet either, so
Yes.
I'm curious, so
In my mind, I kept thinking, swamp gas. I just keep thinking of, like, when you see kind of steam coming off
yeah,
water after a
right,
certain point. And I thought in my head, I'm like, how is that possibly mistaken with a craft
right,
hovering over the swamp? But
uh-huh,
here is what swamp gas is, and this is why
okay,
they claim it.
okay.
So it's actually when vegetation decomposes and gases are trapped in ice. So this is what happens in colder climates
Mm,
when it gets cold and snowy. So all these gases are getting trapped under the ice. And then spring comes and everything melts and the gases are now released. The gases are lighter than air and they burn with like a pale blue or yellow flame. So that's where the lights come in. It is a mixture of methane, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, and trace phosphine. Um,
mm,
so it can
okay,
actually give like a floating effect and
okay,
it can move around when you're watching it. And it gives
okay,
off these colors. So these gases can actually kind of move around and
huh,
up and down, back and forth, and they kind of emit some colors from it.
okay,
Um, they do say that it can actually give the appearance of being a solid object. Um, so there's that. Take what you will. I don't know. Maybe that would kind of explain the disappearing and reappearing of
maybe,
those things.
hmm,
But I also feel like
but it was as big as a house?
but as big as a house, right? And the people who were seeing that, the deputies who had talked about that, like it
Yeah,
was away from the swamp at this point now.
right,
That was while they were out on the road looking up above their car and that's there. So as far as I know, swamp gas can travel, but mostly around the swamp, not so
right,
much take off down the road.
right, and is it brown with a quilted texture?
No, and when I looked, it did not give that as part of the definition.
Does
So,
it does it pick up alligators and
right. Could you imagine? Oh my gosh, if there was
it's just
something like that that could pick up alligators and take them around, forget it. I would be done. No thanks.
I mean, I've heard of it like raining frogs, but
Right. Raining gators. Oh my gosh.
yeah. Okay.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
I see where they're going with this, but it's
sure.
not something that's completely makes sense to me. It doesn't
Well,
fit. It doesn't check every box in
it
the
doesn't.
descriptions that were coming
Right.
in.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I just feel
Yeah.
like anybody, it had to be so frustrating for the people that witnessed this stuff.
Oh,
And
I
then,
can only
they had to be like, there is no way that was swamp gas, you
right.
know?
Agreed. And
So,
needless to say, Sheriff Harvey was not okay with this explanation as
okay,
well.
good for
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
I believe actually when he looked at us, he had said it was complete and total bullshit. So, so
Nice.
he did not agree with any of that. In fact, he was quoted to say, "That's a pretty weak theory. I'm not ready to accept it." And
Okay.
Frank Manor was not ready to accept that answer as well.
I
Frank
bet.
and his family felt very confident about what they saw, and it wasn't swamp gas. And then Frank Manor later said that he spent time. He said, "I spent time on Army maneuvers in the swamps of Louisiana." So there you go.
Okay.
During
Yeah.
World War II, he said, "I've seen plenty of swamp gas. This wasn't it. We saw what we saw. All right." So there you have it. I mean,
Mhm.
they were not buying the swamp gas situation at all.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? The government has now told you this is what you're going to call it. End of story.
Yeah.
And there was a physicist by the name of Edward Condon, and he had a group of 11 scientists, and they concluded nothing of scientific value was happening at the Manor farm. So
Mm.
you've got physicists. I'm going to have trouble with this one. Physicists and an astrophysicist, and you have all these scientists telling you you've got nothing.
Right.
So everyone that came to investigate, they pack up and they leave. And swamp gas was the answer. And that was the end of the story for them. But
Interesting.
unfortunately, because of the explanation, word got out to the people of Dexter, and the Manor family started getting harassed. This is exactly what we were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, like I said, I was watching the news report that you can actually find on YouTube. It's actually called UFO Friend, Foe, or Fantasy.
Ooh,
It is hosted by Walter Cronkite,
okay.
Walter Cronkite, where they actually talk a lot about this specific um, situation, and Frank Manor was interviewed for that too. So I
Okay.
highly suggest, if you're interested in this, go check that out.
We could link it. You wanna
Yeah,
link it
that would be
in
cool. We'll
the
link
show
it. And
notes?
yep,
Yeah.
sounds good because
Okay.
I got a lot of good information from there as well, and it's really interesting. And it goes on, not just about this situation. It talks about other flying saucer sightings, but poor Frank said that people would drive all the way out to their farm and throw beer bottles at their cars, yell and
Man.
scream at them that they were crazy and that they were liars. He said that if he ever had to do it over again, he would have never told anybody what happened on his farm that night. And they just wanted to be left alone. And this is kind of
Yeah.
like what we were talking about earlier. This
Mhm.
is, I know today you hear about it, and I'm always in disbelief because I don't understand wanting that type of attention. I
Attention.
can't
Yeah.
wrap my head around that type of attention.
No.
Um, but people do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a fact. It happens. I just think, like we were saying, during that time, these, this type of family, people like this, I mean, small town people, they're not wanting because it ends up people harassing them. This went on for years,
Yeah.
being, called names. Like
This is
they
I
were
mean,
not
it's
looking
just
for
too
that
bad.
negative. Yeah, they were not looking for that type of negative attention,
Right. And I mean, even let's just say hypothetically that they were wrong. It was
Yeah.
swamp gas. Do they deserve to have, that
Yeah,
kind of treatment,
100%.
things thrown at them and harassed,
Absolutely. No,
it's just
no,
crazy.
you don't. They saw what they saw. And
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, if that is the explanation, they weren't making it up.
Right.
And it
They
wasn't
saw
just the
something.
Manners. Yeah, they
Yeah.
saw something, and there were so many other people
Yeah.
who like I said, from the police department who saw this stuff too. So it's it's very sad. Frank Manor ended up passing away in February of 1983 at the age of 64.
Well, that's young.
Yes, it is young.
Yeah.
And so, I don't, I hate, I don't want that to be his legacy, to be, the guy who made up, the story of
Right.
the UFO on their property. I do think he saw what he saw, and
Mhm.
I think he should actually be commended as someone who was not afraid to
Right.
say these types of things exist. It was right in front of my face. I saw it
Mhm.
and I know it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think Frank Manor, it might be he's an early pioneer, if you will,
Yeah.
of UFO sightings.
Right.
Coming
Yep.
out, I guess I should say about UFO
Mhm.
from what, whatever you want to believe. UFO sightings have been happening since, probably the beginning of time.
Right.
But he said it. He said what
Mhm.
was what he saw, and he believed in it. And so I believe that. So
I wonder
I
if
think
the officers that reported seeing if they got harassed. I
I wonder
wonder.
that too.
Mm,
That you don't hear about. You don't hear what
no.
happened to the sheriff's department after that.
Right.
And even talking with Doug after that, he didn't really go into anything quite like that, but he was
Yeah.
very insistent. You know, that's what that
Mhm.
was. It was a UFO. It was a flying saucer, and
Yeah.
he didn't feel like there was any other scientific explanation for something like that.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
yeah, Dr. Hynek, he would continue on as a. Uh, we've talked about how we pronounce this. A ufologist.
Ufologist? I think so. Yeah.
Those listening, please let us
Ufologist.
know if we're saying this wrong, but I'm going to go with ufologist.
Yeah. Or we could it's I think it's ufologist. The other option, I guess, was what? UFologist?
Ufologist, yeah.
Ufologist. I think it's ufologist. I'm
I
going
want
with
to.
ufologist.
I kind of want to go with an oofologist.
Ufologist. Yeah.
So yes, so Dr. Hynek, he would continue on as a ufologist, investigating several other UFO sightings. And Hynek would later become not such a skeptic anymore. I think
Yeah.
after you talk to enough people, you can't help it. He
Mhm.
eventually changed his mind about UFOs and started believing the witnesses he would talk to. He ended up writing a book called Hynek UFO Report, where he goes over 12,000 sightings and talks about what he believes were the real ones and some of the false ones.
I mean,
He,
12,000 is a lot. It's a lot of
yeah,
sightings. It's a lot, and that's just
yeah,
the people he talked to. So,
yes.
yeah.
And I think, and this has always been something I've thought about, and I feel like might actually be kind of a theme of our show in general, is
Mhm.
it only takes one of these stories to be true. It just
Right.
takes one of them
That's it. Yeah, just one. Mhm.
to make these things real.
Right.
And so to hear there are that many, um, I just don't know. How do you deny that,
I
right?
mean, 1 in 12,000,
Exactly.
that's all you need.
Yes, right.
So, I think it says a lot that Dr. Hynek made that flip,
Yes.
especially working with the government and,
Yes.
you know, I think it probably made a huge impact on him when he was silenced, you know?
Yeah, I
So,
think so too, because
yeah.
he's probably thinking, what am I here for then?
Right. Yeah.
What am I doing?
Right.
I mean, I would after a while. Then what's the point of
Mhm.
me going to these places if you're going to have me come up with an explanation, that doesn't make sense?
Right.
Why am I out here investigating then? So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad he kind of came out and said what he said. He also talks about in his book what the government suppressed about those cases and why. So
Oh, okay.
it would be a great read. He would
Yeah.
later go on to create the classification for encounters, right?
Okay.
So the close encounters of the first kind, second kind, third kind. Um,
Okay.
Jamie, do you know what those are?
N
Do you,
I
do you know what
I
each one
feel like
is?
I used to know, but
Yeah.
I don't anymore.
Okay.
Um, but I've seen the movie.
Right.
Close Encounters.
Yes.
So which way does it go? Is first the bottom and then the third kind is like this is they're
Yeah.
here, they're
As
here, or
as you get higher, it gets bigger. So the close
okay,
encounters of the first kind is you spot something in the sky and it leaves no evidence.
okay,
So close encounters of the second kind is a UFO leaves some kind of physical trace. So like a burn on the ground,
okay. Crop
crop
circles, or
circles,
yeah,
yes, broken
okay.
branches, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Close encounters of the third kind is which an animated entity is present. So this
Ooh,
includes humanoids. It
okay.
says robots. So in case there's a
Okay.
robot on the ship, and humans who seem to be occupants or pilots of a UFO. So
Oh,
interesting.
interesting. Yeah.
And then after Hynek passing the classifications of close encounters of the fourth kind and fifth kind were then created because more accounts were coming out where people are really encountering maybe the life forms that are on these ships. So
Okay.
then you have close encounters of the fourth kind, which is where aliens kidnap us. So this is
Mm-hmm.
when we're getting
Abduction. Yeah.
abducted, which
Yep.
Jamie is saying no thanks.
I mean, I draw the line there, but
Yep.
you know,
Cross it. Don't. Boundaries. We all need boundaries, right?
that's right. Yeah.
And so, and then you have close encounters of the fifth kind. So we're having regular conversations with aliens. So
Okay.
that's
And
when they're coming back and
mhm,
visiting, and we are chatting with them.
yeah,
So something like that exists to the point where they had to make that a classification. So there are people
interesting.
out there who are reporting that these aliens come down and they have full blown
Right.
conversations on multiple occasions. So
Mm-hmm.
very
I'd
interesting.
be curious to know, out of the 12,000,
Yeah,
how many were in each category of
excellent.
the
Right,
encounters, you know?
right. Yeah, it would be interesting. And who knows, maybe the book tells a little bit more about that
Yeah.
too.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I can't even imagine visiting 12,000 different places and talking with that many different people,
Yeah. And he
finding
must
out more.
have made this this was his mission,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think it became his
because
life.
you can't talk to that many people.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, there's scheduling and
yeah,
there's, you know, like
right.
it takes a lot of effort to talk to 12,000 people and a lot of time.
100%. Yes. And
So
if I
it's,
can be honest, I'm not even sure if all of those locations were in the United States. It's certainly possible.
mm,
It could have been out of the country. I'm not sure.
yeah,
But it's a
true.
lot. That's a lot.
A lot, a lot.
Now, it is said
Interesting.
that we talked a little bit about the movie. So it
Hmm.
is said that Steven Spielberg paid Dr. Hynek $1,000 to borrow the phrase for his 1977 film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
1,000 whole dollars?
Right. Knowing now what Spielberg has become, if I were Hynek, I would have been like, you're going to have to
Yeah.
show me a little more
Come on,
green.
buddy.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, $1,000, nothing, right?
Okay.
He's probably kicking himself later. He's like, man,
Yeah,
should have gone for
exactly.
$2,000. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
And so eventually, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, he would pass away April 27th, 1986, and at the age of 75.
Okay.
And he is still known as one of the leading ufologists of the world, really.
Nailed
I
it.
don't
He
see
nailed it,
how he
buddy.
couldn't. Yeah, right? Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's yeah. And Doug Harvey, who lived a very rich and colorful life, eventually retired from law enforcement and he opened Harvey's Bar in Saline, Michigan.
No way. How
Yep.
cool is that? Okay.
Yep.
I did not know
And
that.
yep. And he owned Able Testing Company in Ipsy. That's how I met him.
Oh.
Driving with teenagers
Yeah.
and others too, right? There was no, no age
Right.
restriction. You're trying to get your driver's license. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then he had Deep Valley Produce in Howell, Michigan. Um,
Okay.
so all kind of, none of that stuff was too far from each other, but unfortunately, and while I did research on this, because I've always wondered about Doug, he
Yeah.
was just, I just loved him. I thought he was just such a character. I
Sounds
had
like it.
even later, when I went to school to study video production, I was taking a documentary class, and we had to pitch an idea for a documentary. And I had actually pitched the idea of doing a story on Doug Harvey because I just
Oh,
found him
nice.
fascinating. And I had
Yeah.
even called him. I called him because I started working with the videographer first before I went back to school, and so I hadn't really stayed in touch with him, but I called him up and I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but
Yeah.
I just think it would be fascinating to do a story about your life. And I pitched the idea. And we had a professional documentarian come in and judge us. But apparently he did not like my idea. So my idea didn't get chosen.
Oh, too
But
bad.
I called Doug back and I told him the situation. I just had said to him, I was like, you need to tell your story. Like, you've got to,
Mhm.
write a book, do a documentary. So I don't think he ever did. I'm hoping someone out there will, because I just think he's fascinating, and the stuff that
Yeah.
he did is absolutely fascinating. Um,
Well,
so
this is
that's
a
what I thought.
little devotion to
Yes,
him. We
yes,
can
to Doug
dedicate,
Harvey. Yes,
yeah, we
yes,
can dedicate
and
this episode to
yes, to Doug
Doug
Harvey
Harvey.
and the Harvey Hotel, and
Yeah.
all those hippies who lost all their hair too.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Doug Harvey did pass away at 91, November 22nd of
So
2023.
he lived a
So
good long life.
he really did. He really
Yes.
did.
And that was not,
Um,
that was a year, a little over a year
yeah, a
ago.
little over a year ago.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, and because I had always kind of wondered like what happened to
Mm.
him, and
Yeah.
so yeah, there he was. So yeah, so there is
That
my
is a great story.
mystery
That's,
story. First
yeah.
episode for you, everyone.
Yes. I don't think we could have started with a better one. That was a
Okay.
really great story.
Good. I'm
So,
glad. I definitely
yeah.
enjoy it, and I've always had an interest in
Mhm.
UFOs and flying saucers, and I know growing up in our house, it was. I mean, my dad had a huge fascination with it, and so
Okay.
he openly talked about things like that. So it was never anything that felt like super scary to me. It was
Yeah.
just kind of like it's there, like it happens. So
Uh-huh.
and then, like I said, this is one of those stories that got talked about a lot, and from time to time you get news articles talking about it again and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there it is.
Very good stuff. I wanna
Yeah.
look into Hynek's book. I do.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
I'm interested in that.
I think that would be good, and we can
Yeah,
actually add that to the title
to
of the
the
book in the
links.
show notes as
Yeah.
well. Yes, yeah, because it's out there.
Yeah.
So super fascinating if you want to learn more about Dr. Hynek, and so not just this story, but others. It sounds like you're included in there. So that sounds
Yeah.
good. Mm-hmm.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. So, we'll add that link, and then the
Yep.
link, what was the other link?
Yeah.
I
To
forgot.
the no, that's okay. It was the Walter Cronkite news
That's
report they
right.
had
Yeah.
done. Yes.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So we'll do that too.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Well,
So good.
great. This was a great first episode.
We did
I had
it.
fun. We did it. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Yes, thank you everybody
Yeah.
for tuning in, and
Yeah.
we are hoping to hear some of your stories as well. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be UFOs, anything paranormal. We're totally interested in, and so you can actually email us at the Unexplained Archives 2025 at gmail.com, and we'll also have that included in the show notes. And you can follow us on Facebook at the Unexplained Archives and Instagram at Unexplained Archives 25. So,
Woohoo.
yeah,
Yeah.
follow us and all the good stuff. Plus, we're
That's
on
right.
YouTube. If you are
Yeah.
listening to us, you can actually see our beautiful faces on YouTube.
That's right. Be sure and
And
give
vice
us
versa.
a thumbs up and
Yeah.
a subscribe and
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
that stuff.
Yeah, because we've
We
got
would
more
appreciate it.
super exciting stories
We do.
coming up the road. So,
I'm
yeah,
excited that we already have such a great lineup. So,
I know
lots
it
more
is
to come.
lots
Yeah.
more. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so please join us again next
Yes.
week for the Unexplained Archives.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.